What's going on? Welcome back to Financial Journey. So today I want to talk to you about Rivian. I want to go over some of the current data points, break it down on why it's been so volatile, and then aside from that, where I see things going from here. Before we get into any of that, make sure to hit that thumbs up. And with that, let's get right to it. So starting off on Friday, did have a pretty epic day. Did close 6.1% in the green. 28.2 million shares being traded, 38.2 is the average. These are some of the transactions that did occur on the secondary market above $100,000. So you do see a lot of buying coming from institutions. This does seem like a lot, but in comparison to 2 weeks ago, or even definitely more specifically like a month ago, night and day difference. So you can tell that institutions are somewhat hesitant about getting in, and clearly that's correlated with their upcoming Q1 earnings. You do see a couple big ones though, so 8.25 million, 1.02, 1.95, and also speaking on Q1 earnings, I'm going to go over the current estimates done by analysts and what they've recently been doing. But as of late, Rivian hasn't been all that active for news. So last one was April the 22nd, so it's been a good week or so. For SEC filings, last one was on April the 24th, and that was a Form 4, just showed this individual right here. So Pamela, who is a director, did acquire some stock, and that's through RSU, so nothing really crazy, and it was only 1,500 shares or 1,600 shares. So whatever, it is what it is, nothing really crazy to write home about. So despite it being only 1,600 shares, still a nice change of events considering there has been a lot of selling that's been happening. So you can kind of see this is all the insider transactions for Rivian. So you see some granted right here, and Pamela is one of them, as you can kind of see right here. So 1,500 shares. There's also a couple more, which I don't believe they submitted Form 4s for, yeah, it looks like it's just the one. But still, aside from that though, you do see some selling coming from the CAO and the CCO. CAO, that one is more concerning because that was 37% of their position. So they did sell $414,000 worth at a price of $13.18. And yeah, prior to that, CCO, $12.81. That's what they sold at, $255,000. And also on a side note, that is transaction code S. So that is straight up sell, not for tax purposes, because if it was tax purpose related, it'd be transaction code F, as you can kind of see right here. So that is something of concern, and no doubtedly that did hurt the sentiment at the time. So yeah, that's something just to keep in mind. Obviously, that is right outside the blackout period. So clearly they wanted to sell. Maybe this upcoming earnings is going to be somewhat negative. We'll just have to wait and see. But moving on, what I'll do is I'll give you a quick overview of the estimates currently by analysts for the Q1 earnings. And actually, while I'm on here, this is the latest analyst ratings. So last one was done 9 days ago, $10 price target, Barclays, Dan Levy. I believe I brought all this up in the last video or the previous one, and just anticipate a hell of a lot of attention coming from institutions post earnings. So their earnings are coming out after hours on May the 7th. So again, just kind of add that to your calendar. But a lot of the key metrics that people have been really watching for throughout 2024, earnings per share, revenue, and potentially if there is any likelihood of dilution. Oddly, the market's been punishing any company that is going to be needing money. And luckily enough, Rivian does have sufficient amount of cash on hand, so they probably won't need to dilute. Probably, if anything, tail end of Q4 2024, if not early part of 2025. But beside the point, currently $1.15 as a loss for their earnings per share, and that's based on 16 analysts. No real change over this last little bit. So again, I think that's kind of good and probably anticipated. Historically though, Rivian does usually beat on analyst expectations, with the exception of, it looks like the last one came in a little bit worse off. So Q4 estimates were negative $1.32, came in at negative $1.36. And recently they did announce that they were laying off some staff as well. Not a substantial amount, but still something to be aware of. But revenue, oddly, this is a little bit more optimistic. So no change for the number of analysts, so still 17. So that means one analyst did recently readjust their estimates. So it went from 1.13 billion to 1.16 billion. So one analyst was a little bit more optimistic. Of course, we can't really see who gave what ratings and whatever else, but you can kind of look at the true analyst ratings just to see if they maybe coincide. So obviously it was done recently, so it could be one of these four most likely. So UBS, RBC, Needham, or Barclays. And if it is clearly very bullish, then most likely it was Chris Pierce that did recently adjust their rating to be a little bit more bullish on Rivian. Chris, though, does have a 32% success rating, so not necessarily the best. And while I'm actually on here, I'll kind of jump forward and talk on the Elliott Wave technicals. A lot of people really do like that, and so far it's been very accurate, but it does have a pivot point of $7.90. So for as long as Rivian is above that, then it is anticipated to get to kind of the mid-10s. So that's at least in the short term, maybe leading up to their earnings. And then, of course, dependent on what they do say in their earnings, that'll definitely move it very volatile, of course, because it's been somewhat consolidating over this last little bit. And it's because a lot of the market's trying to digest a lot of things such as this. Like, why would the CCO and CAO sell out some of their positions? CCO, for full disclosure, only did return or kind of close out 4.66% of their overall position. So it's not really crazy, but the CAO, that is of concern. And so yeah, let me know your thoughts on that in the comments below. But moving on, looking at shorts. On Friday, shorts did return 422,000 shares, but essentially it is at still all-time high number or short interest numbers. So 20.54% of the free float is being shorted. That works out to be 144.82 million shares overall are being shorted. Cost to borrow average is 1%, and then utilization is 75.97. So relatively high stuff for that. Still, Rivian's not a squeeze play, despite some analysts coming out and saying that Rivian is a squeeze play. I just don't see it feasible, even though shorts are really doubling down on Rivian. I think it's because they're catching on to a lot of the red flags leading into their earnings, and plus just the overall sentiment. Like, we saw Tesla's numbers. Tesla, like, they bombed. The only thing that saved them was future guidance. I don't know if Rivian does have the same level of future guidance that they give or could give, because they did kind of lay out all their cards last earnings to save them. So this time around, they can give updates, but I think their future guidance will be somewhat lackluster. If anything, it'll be more additional cost-cutting measures, which, yeah, it's good, but no reason for it to squeeze as a result. But that's just me, of course, not a financial advisor. Looking at options on Friday, a lot of money was getting into Rivian, so $6.16 million in calls, 1.66 in puts. Sentiment-wise, though, 45% of all the options being done were bearish, and obviously anticipating for it to continue to trend down. Of the call options that were purchased on Friday, you see a consensus for it to be above $9, and encumbering their earnings, so May the 10th, you see it roughly, like, oddly, there's not that much optimism. Maybe it's above $10 basically, but still, people maybe are somewhat still hesitant about Rivian. Looking at puts, you do see a consensus for it to be sub 850 going into this upcoming week, and then the week of their earnings, you don't really see all that much, it just being sub $8, which, given that we're at $9 right now, kind of is somewhat extreme still. But with it at $9.04, it is right above this R1. So going into next week, which is going to be a very volatile week, mind you, 903, you'll want to watch for that to continue to hold. But vice versa, 925 will be the next strong resistance, and then 959. So kind of just take note of some of these strong support and resistance points, and then the $8.68 will be that further support in case this 903 doesn't hold. And I'll give you a quick overview on the actual chart itself. So still, it's been somewhat consolidating. Like I said, there's been a lot of red flags that's been coming out despite the optimistic, like, second half of 2024. Q1 was somewhat lackluster, and so ultimately I think a lot of people are anticipating somewhat mixed results for their earnings. That's why you haven't seen that full level of buying that's really been propelling a lot of growth stocks higher. Plus, aside from that, the fear and greed index right now is at 42, so it's improving from the week prior, but still at 42 it is relatively low. So people's appetite for risk might not be kind of pushing it or gravitating towards Rivian, in my opinion. But still, lower percentile of the boiling band, you do see see it at 20 stochastic, so that is considered oversold. You don't see any defined trend, and number of retail investors have been getting in. But mind you, this has been very abnormal, this, I guess, lack of crazy movement. So it looks like people are kind of holding for a while. And I think when it comes down to Rivian, it went down so much so fast that people just don't want to sell at a loss. They've done their due diligence. Anyone still holding Rivian is a long-term holder, whether it be because they don't want to sell at a loss or whatever else. But like I've said, I really do like Rivian. It will be one of the biggest contenders to Tesla in the foreseeable future, but the EV market is completely bleeding. And I think right now, the only saving grace for that sector is interest rate cuts. And that might be coming maybe in July, September. We'll just have to wait and see. I think obviously the Feds are making a decision on that as well this upcoming week. Of course, there won't be any actual cuts or rates hikes this week itself, but what they're going to be talking on and giving guidance on, that could really help Rivian on a side note. But all in all, definitely shows a lot of signs of fear and that it could potentially continue to trend down, not where it does break the Elliott wave technicals, so that 790 pivot, but still I think there's just a lot of fear when it comes down to Rivian, and potentially could continue just to trend down as a result. So let me know your thoughts on Rivian. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. Do you disagree? Do you think that Rivian is a screaming buying opportunity, or do you think it is going to continue to trend down? My last two videos were all about Rivian, and I did say at both times, I think one was it was at $12, second one was at 10, that based on all the data points, it does anticipate that it's going to continue to trend down. And so far, it's done exactly that. So, and keep in mind, when I was doing those videos, the market was very, very optimistic about rate cuts. That's before the Feds decided to meddle in and kind of pop that essentially. So yeah, I think right now, Rivian is a good company long term. So if you are looking at getting in the EV sector, and you don't mind some volatility, then yeah, Rivian's definitely one of those stocks that will do amazing things. But if you're one of those individuals that's trying to catch the exact bottom, in my opinion, which I'm not a financial advisor, I would highly suggest in holding off. So let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up. One final thing, make sure you guys definitely take advantage of this promo. Simply sign up for a new account, throw $100 at it, and they give you 7 fractional shares of the Mag7. So a pretty kick-ass deal. Link in the description below and also the comments. With all that said, appreciate all of you watching.